Sentinel Online, now loading the Geekcast radio network of podcasts.
Coming up on MWIRE Weekly, we discuss a possible Pacific Rim 2, Liam Neeson kicking butt and taking names like only he can again, and our discussion on the latest remake of Carrie. All that and more on MWIRE Weekly. Hello and welcome to MWIRE Weekly, where we discuss the movie week that was. I'm your host, Daniel Clark, and joining me on today's venture are Kevin Otmasolo. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
And Michael Booth Powers. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing fine. For those who are joining us for the first time or those returning visitors, to give you a rundown of what we do here at MWIRE Weekly, we begin with a discussion of what we've been watching recently, move into movie news, and then to mosey on over to our main attraction for this week, which will be the horror remake of Carrie. And then we finish each show with coming attractions, where we look at the upcoming movie releases and DVD and Blu-ray releases, and finish off with our credit conversation, where we discuss the feedback from last episode and look ahead to next episode. So to start things off here, we'll just kind of have a little roundabout discussion about what we've watched this past week. So who would like to begin as we, in what we've been watching?
I can go first. I only had a chance to actually watch one film over the course of this last week, and that was Runner with Justin Timberlake and Ben Affleck. I knew it had gotten terrible reviews and whatnot, but wanted to see something, and it was before Friday, so I couldn't see any of the new stuff. It was really one of the only films that I hadn't seen that was out in the theater, so went and gave it a watch. I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of the reviews said it was. I mean, I'm not saying it was a fantastic work of art or anything like that, but it was interesting. It was entertaining. I really didn't know what it was about, so as luck would have it, we had like an hour to kill, my friend and I, before the movie started, so we were trying to decide something to do, and we ended up going and playing some video slots, which I don't do a lot, but just kind of randomly did, and I won a little bit of money, and I really didn't know that was what the film was about, so it was kind of ironic then when we sat down and watched a film about gambling. But no, I didn't mind it. I like Justin Timberlake usually as an actor. He's kind of has surprised me over the years, just like Mark Wahlberg has. So I mean, I think it's worth a watch if you're looking for something like later on, like on Netflix or Redbox or something like that or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it or anything like that, but it's worth a watch if you like that type of film.
I guess the big question is, does Ben Affleck's role in that, does that make you more or less happy that he's playing Batman?
I mean, it doesn't have a huge impact on it. If anything, I think it makes it a little more sensible to have him. I mean, maybe a little more believable with him as that role, because he kind of plays a somewhat of kind of a dark character in that film. So I can see that. I mean, I'm not someone that's been flipping out because of that casting, but I think this helps his case a little bit, maybe.
Interesting. When I saw Runner, like the first thing that kind of came to my mind was like Rounders. Is it at all similar to that anyway? Is it like...
in a way, I mean, it almost reminded me more of like what was the name of that film? 21 or
okay.
A couple of those type of films. I thought it would be a little bit more complex, a little more dark than it was. I don't know. It didn't, for me, stand out in the realm of sports gambling or betting or that type of movie where you have obviously people getting mixed up in stuff that isn't quite kosher, etc. So I mean, nothing really stood out. It was just it was an enjoyable experience. That's about all I can say about it.
Well, yeah, I guess I haven't myself had any opportunity to check that out. I've kind of the bad reviews, and wasn't that much interested in it to begin with, but you never know. I
was more so interested just to see how Timberlake and Affleck could coexist or play off of each other, and I think they did a fine job.
Alrighty. Powers, how about you? Anything you would like to discuss for this week?
I picked up Pacific Rim on Blu-ray. I don't know if either of you did.
I did
Not
as
yet.
well.
I watched all the special features, because they do that nice thing where they allow you to play all, and that's always nice when, especially when your special feature vignettes or whatever are like 5 minutes each. Um, there was like an hour and 20 minutes of special features on there, and I watched all of those. There were some really interesting things that they did with that movie that you don't really. I mean, I guess on the surface, just watching it, you don't realize how much eye candy is actually packed into a scene. um they tell you, or Guillermo del Toro tells you, that they designed the Jaegers from the inside out. So there's actually complete skeletal workings of like where the engines are, where all the cabling goes, and all that stuff is all built from the inside out. And then it's amazing that they show you that stuff, and then they show you like a clip from the movie. And because they're like highlighting one particular thing, you see something that you might not have seen like before, and you realize how much detail that actually adds into it. When it's like, you don't realize that it's there, but it on a subconscious level you see it. And it was really neat because he just talks about how, in the special features, he talks about how when he goes to build a world, he always thinks of the tiniest things, because those are the things that matter. Like, most people think it's just like the scope and the size of the world that you build adds the realism to it, but it's the smaller things, like the stickers here and there, like the warnings, and like little, just like the kind of like how the first Star Wars movies, everything looked worn in and beat up. Like, that stuff adds to the world. And he mentions that a lot with Pacific Rim. And there's also an excellent commentary track on there that I started watching. I got halfway through it, and that was really interesting. But I always like commentary tracks, and I'll probably finish the commentary track, and I don't know if I'll actually watch the movie outright, because I find I have a hard time watching movies like by myself. And my wife doesn't have an interest in watching it again right now, because I think I oversold the movie to her. So when she saw it, she was just kind of like, "Oh, okay, I don't really get it." But it looked. I mean, obviously, a commentary track does not interfere with the way a movie looks or anything like that. But it looks great on Blu-ray, just like I expected it to. But I love that movie, and I really really like the music. That when you first load it up, you get the Gypsy Danger music, and it's awesome. It gets me every time.
Yeah, it's great to see like a blockbuster that actually had a theme, because there's so very few that have like actual themes, and that did, and that does strike you when it comes on. You just hear that, and it's so subtle sometimes you miss it, but it builds itself up so much. But I like you mentioned, the commentary tracks on any Del Toro film are great, because he's like a kid in like a candy store. Just how much he's one of those directors I think appreciates what he does, and he like loves living in that world. You can tell he is a fanboy at heart, and it comes out in his movies, and when he's like when he's like talking about them, because I think he puts so much thought, more thought than anyone. I think, like you mentioned, all the small details. I didn't watch all the special features, but I watched a few, and it was really interesting too. And just seeing how much of that world was not physical, but it was all blue screen. I knew most of it was, but just realizing how very like on set, very little on set they did, but it never never did it feel like that. I always felt like I was in a world, and never felt like had that blue screen effect, because I think part of that was, like you mentioned, all the small details. You kind of get focused on that, and you kind of just buy in right away. So
yeah, I think my favorite part of the whole special features was talking when they were talking about filming the Shatterdome, and they had like they had the floor was there, and then they had these. It was just a giant green screen box, and they had to move. They just shot the people from different angles and showed them walking in different directions. And when they showed like the footage in the movie, obviously it looked like they were walking through this giant place, but really they were just walking, back and forth across this green screen thing. And it never occurs to you, like, because it's kind of interesting. On one hand, I like practical effects. I think that it adds something that you lose when you use like green screen and all that stuff. A case in point, see, the original Star Wars trilogy and the new Star Wars trilogy. Because Lucas, I don't know what happened to ILM and Lucasfilms, but that the prequels are atrocious. But I like a certain amount of practical effect, and I was actually kind of surprised. I think I've been surprised lately this year with how much stuff has been green screen and how much stuff has actually been practical effect. And I think Pacific Rim, just seeing all the behind the scenes stuff, there was a lot more. Like some of the stuff I thought maybe it might have been like location sets or something like that, but then you realize they actually built like Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And it's like I mean I thought that was like on location. I didn't realize that was like a set.
Yeah, I mean they do just enough. Like they do enough like physical shots to kind of set it, and then when they get more deeper into the world, it's pretty much all blue screen. But like you mentioned, it's blue screen done right. Like I too am more fan of practical effects, but if I can watch a special effect and not feel like it's a special effect, that is a pretty impressive skill. So like something like Gravity that we talked about a few weeks ago. Obviously, most of that was they weren't really filming in space, but felt like they were. So
yeah,
anything else you want? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, there was a surprising amount of special effects in Gravity, but none of it really felt like a special effect. So
very true. Anything else you wanted to go over?
No, I think I did catch Carrie. I also was thinking about catching Escape Plan because that also came out this week. But I caught the end of it, like the last 10 minutes.
So you know the entire Escape Plan then?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he gets flushed down a toilet.
Figured that was it. It's always the plan.
It's always the plumbing. That's how they get him every time. It's the plumbing.
It's the key. So I just have a couple quick things I wanted to go over. I thought it was apt to earlier this week. A Hijacking came out, and it's we talked about Captain Phillips last week, and this correlates pretty well because this too is about Somali pirates taking over a ship, but this is actually a Danish film about a similar situation where hijackers take over a cargo ship. It's a lot smaller cargo ship than the one that was in Captain Phillips, and I heard a lot of people comparing Captain Phillips and the Hijacking, and a lot of people saying a Hijacking was better. A lot of people saying Captain Phillips was better. So I wanted to go in and see what one's actually better. One thing I'll say though is they are two very different movies. Don't go into a Hijacking thinking you're watching a thriller because it's not. It's in fact you don't even see the hijacking. It doesn't. It kind of happens off screen. It's more of a drama or a slow burn, or than it is like a edge of your seat thriller. Just to give you like an idea, like I mentioned, it's a hijacking. The hijacking actually takes place over about a 4 months period, and the main conflict is not even in the captain. It's like this cook character who kind of becomes like the spokesperson for the crew, and a CEO in Denmark who owns the ship, and him negotiating with the hijackers to try to get his ship back and get his people back. And it's really like interesting drama more so than a thriller. And I did think it was an excellent film. I enjoyed Captain Phillips a lot more. But if you're looking kind of, you watch Captain Phillips and you're like, I could go for another hijacking movie, definitely watch a Hijacking. It's like I mentioned, it's subtitles. I know people can't stand subtitles, but I'm sure there might be a dub version, but I wouldn't do that because dub versions are horrible. But anyways, it's a slow burn, and the acting is really strong. I wouldn't say it's tense all that much. It is very claustrophobic because they're stuck in this ship for months on end, and it's like grungy and dirty. They have no bathroom. It becomes like a place you don't really want to live in. But it's interesting because the crew of the ship and the hijackers kind of build this relationship. And I remember when we talked about Captain Phillips, Kevin, you mentioned about wanting more time on the ship. Well, you get plenty of time on the ship on this one, because that's where they're there for the most part.
It's all ship all the time.
It is. It's all ship all the time. It's just interesting too, and just the different mindsets. It just shows you how different we are as a country, the United States, and other countries, because their mindset in it is a lot different. Like there is like no military option, even suggested really, which I found odd, just because, that's why wouldn't you just send in the military? But that's not even an idea or an approach they go through. It just this completely no negotiation tactic that they go. And it's interesting too because you see this company usually negotiating business deals, trying to negotiate with terrorists basically to get their crew. So, but yeah, there's really not much more than say to that. It's a really straightforward film, but I did enjoy it.
Real quick, I just an aside with subtitled movies. I'm interested to see what you guys think here. Whenever I watch a subtitled movie, I always find that, like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes in, I stop noticing the subtitles, and I'm actually just kind of I mean, obviously, I still see them, and I can't all of a sudden, I'm not all of a sudden fluent in the language that they're speaking in the movie. But I feel like the subtitle just kind of becomes a subconscious thing, and I'm actually able to just my brain is picking up the words at the bottom of the screen, but I'm not actively reading them. So it's kind of like a weird like translation thing going on in your brain.
For me, it depends on the movie. Most of the time I am able to do that, and I kind of forget like I'm even reading, because I'm just kind of watching and it just seems like I'm picking it up quickly. But there are times where I think, depending on the writing and how the movie is written and the dialogue, etc., that it can be distracting. But most of the time I'm with you. I just adjust within the first, like you said, 15, 20 minutes, and I forget I'm doing it. Like, I remember, oh geez, I'm trying to think of one right now, Passion of Christ, and a couple other ones. I mean, I haven't seen a subtitle movie here in a little bit, but I do remember having that same kind of feeling that you were kind of explaining there.
Yeah, it's almost like you start off reading it, and then by 20 minutes in, you're like, oh, I'm fluent in this language.
Yeah, I do actually. I watch a good amount of foreign film thanks to Netflix because you get access to them so easily. And I notice though too sometimes if I'm tired and watching a subtitle movie, I just start. It makes me a little bit more tired just because the combination of watching a movie and reading. But it does kind of go away rather quickly, especially if it's really good and it just starts to kind of flow together and you forget that it's subtitled, especially if you see it in like a theater. Like, I saw The Raid Redemption in the theater, and it wasn't within the first 5 minutes. Well, there's not much talking in that movie to begin with. It's mostly all action, but you don't even notice it. Or I saw more in the theater too. The same thing.
Or I think if the acting or the story is relatable, because this is gonna sound really weird after I just said relatable, but one of the last subtitle movies I watched was, I think it was Let the Right One In, the European version of Let Me In, and just like I watched it before the US remake came out, and I was watching it on Netflix, and I just what was being portrayed on screen, like the bullying or the yelling back and forth between like kids, it was like I was able to, like, I might have also been reading what was happening on the screen, but I was also just by the actions that were occurring on screen, I was able to, like, my dialogue that I had in my head that they were saying, like, fit with what was actually happening on screen.
I think something that kind of helps me not get distracted by it, and I don't remember what the reasoning was, but I remember once upon a time, I don't know if I was in high school or college or what, that I used to watch movies, and even, I'm talking about movies without subtitles, where I would turn the captions on. I don't remember what the reasoning was for me doing that. I don't know if it was because of the levels and the volume between the voice and the music in the movie. I don't know if it was an accent that I was having trouble with, or I don't know if I was just doing it to do it. But I remember going through a phase where a lot of the times I would just turn the captions on. Like I said, I don't know why, but I did that for a while, and I think that kind of helps too in then watching subtitle movies, because I'm just kind of used to it. I don't do that anymore. I'm going to have to explore my inner recesses in my brain to figure out why I did that once upon a time.
And there are sometimes those movies that you wish they had subtitles. Like, you might watch a movie from the UK and think, oh, they're speaking English, but then the accents might be so heavy, like something like Snatch, where they use that to their advantage with like Brad Pitt's character, and you can't understand like anything he's saying, but they're speaking English, but you could barely understand it. So there's that too, where or even like maybe an Australian film or something like that, where that just either the dialect or the accents can be so strong, it doesn't even matter. So
yeah, I'll turn subtitles on in a video game if I'm having trouble. Like Kevin said, if the audio is mixed really bad, I'll turn subtitles on. That way I can, like, I don't have to crank it all the way up so I can hear something, and then the music kicks in, then I can't hear anything. But yeah, I was just curious at what your guys' takes on subtitles was. So
Doesn't bother me overall. I mean, I know some people will stay away from it just because it's subtitled, and it does not have that effect on me.
All right, and I just wanted to touch on one movie real quick. That's actually on demand right now, and it's the first movie produced by Kevin Smith. He had nothing to do with it creation-wise. He didn't direct it or write it or anything. He just used Modco Pictures to put it out there. Like I mentioned, it's called The Dirties. It's directed by Matt Johnson. I think it's his first movie he's ever directed. And it's like this too relates to Carrie, what we'll get to, because they both center a lot on bullying. It's this movie within a movie about a movie. It's these two friends who are kind of on the outskirts of their high school. They get picked on, they get bullied, and they're actually making a movie for their film class. It's all shot on handheld by a cameraman that you never see, which gets into kind of a lot of the themes of the movie. You're not really sure if this isn't actually a movie happening or this is something inside the main character's mind, but eventually it also gets into with the bullying aspect, kind of the other aspect of that, which is school shootings, and because they start to think about making a movie about a school shooting, about them acting out and going into their school and acting revenge against the people that have been picking on them. And it's an interesting dynamic seeing these two kids go through this, because one's taking it a little bit more seriously than the other, and they start going into these different paths. But it's a very honest film, and it's a really good film. It's especially if you're looking for something to watch and you don't want to go to the theater, throw this on demand. Maybe watch the trailer, because it may not be for everyone. The humor is it's a good movie for if you're really a huge movie fan, because these are two kids who are up and coming cinephiles. They love movies. They talk a lot of movies. A lot of their dialect is all just quotes from movies, quotes from famous movies. Their movie that they're making is pretty much just taking scenes from other movies.
Sounds like you're describing Scream.
I would think even further than Scream per se. It's like Scream messed with a John Hughes movie, if that makes any sense. Sure. But it's really good. It's the acting is really strong, and they're kids who feel real, and they're kids that you can probably relate to, and even there's no one who's really crazy a caricature of a nerd or someone who fits into that mold too quickly. They feel like real actual people, and actually this almost like a documentary, to kind of go for an easy comparison. But I don't want to give really too much away with it, because it's easy to, but I really did enjoy it. It's a small little film. I think it premiered at Sundance earlier this year, but I could see big things going for the director Matt Johnson, who also stars in the movie. So it's called The Dirties. It came out earlier this year. I think it just released on demand. So, alrighty. Anything else before we take a break here and go on to the news?
No, I've got nothing.
Nope.
All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we'll be highlighting this past news.
Pixels in the Animation has wrapped on the Super Mario Bros. Super Show Now TV's Mr. Neil and TF2 and Mike head to Hyrule. That's right, listeners, from episode 16 through episode 20 of PETA Pain in the Ass, we will be covering all 26 episodes of the Legend of Zelda cartoon. And we have a surprise guest co-host for this arc, Ender from Radio Free Cybertron. Excuse us, podcasters. You can catch Pixels in the Animation on www.geekcastradio.com and in iTunes.
Hey, excuse me, princess.
Alrighty, and welcome back to MWIRE Weekly. We're going to move on over to the news, and to start off the news like we do every week, we're highlight this past weekend's box office. There seems to be a trend since we started doing this, and that is Gravity being on top of the weekend. And again, it's number one, taking the top spot this past weekend at the box office, making another $31 million, with its total gross being about 170. It's the third weekend in a row that it's taken number one. The last film to do that actually was Fast and the Furious earlier this summer, when that went 3 weeks in a row too. So it's been a while. It hasn't happened often. Doesn't happen very often in this time of the year, especially not being a horror movie. So, and interesting enough, number two stays number two with Captain Phillips, making a little bit making about 17 million. These numbers aren't final. Carrie just made only about $300,000 left in that. It also made $17 million. So by the time these numbers are official on Monday, 2 and 3 could swap. But Carrie, first, like the big movie coming out this week, ended up with the number 3 spot. Any guys surprised that Gravity and Captain Phillips are remaining 1 and 2 for 2 weeks in a row?
No, I'm not really. With the hype that was behind both of those, I thought with the combination of Carrie, Escape Plan, and The Fifth Estate all coming out this week, that it might be a little bit closer. And obviously with Captain Phillips and Carrie, they are pretty close. But no, I'm not surprised that they're kind of staying towards the top here. I think with the stuff that's coming out, they had a good chance to be there for the better part of a month.
I don't know. I mean, I was actually expecting Carrie to do better than it did, given the time of year, who's in the movie, and what type of movie that it is. I was expecting Carrie to do better than it did. I kind of hope it comes in second. I'm glad. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad Gravity's number 1. That's perfectly fine with me. It's more shocking to me that, especially working in a theater, that Carrie didn't sell out this weekend. There wasn't a movie that sold out this weekend at our theater. So
I would expect Carrie to have a stronger next week.
I can see that too.
Just as we're nearing Halloween and a lot more people start thinking, let's go see a horror film or whatever, it's going to be the one that people are going to go see, I think, as far as next weekend goes, if they're looking for that flick. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that that Fifth Estate didn't do a slightly better than it did, but
I wasn't expecting anything out of Fifth Estate.
I wasn't expecting anything, but as far as like any big things, but I wasn't expecting it to quite be as low as it was. To be on par with Runner and some of the stuff that's already been out for 2-3 weeks kind of surprised me just a tiny bit. I didn't expect it to be very high. I expected it not to crack the top 5 by any means, but
I guess I mean the hard thing about the Fifth Estate is it a story that anyone did? I mean, okay, besides the fact that you guys like movies, did any of you really care about the story of WikiLeaks?
I find it intriguing, but I didn't I had no vested interest in it.
And then the other part of it is there isn't, other than who else is in it besides Benedict Cumberbatch that people would actually know, and then who actually knows Benedict Cumberbatch that hasn't seen Into Darkness or like BBC's Sherlock. I mean, he's not. Yeah. I don't think he's the commodity that they were expecting him to be yet. To lead the movie.
But I think they were expecting kind of strong reviews to help them out. Like I don't think they were banking on star power. I think they were hoping they'd make a great movie that gets a lot of buzz just because of the subject matter. But it had a budget of $28 million, which is like nothing to shake a stick at. But I doubt it's going to come close to making that back. So I'm sure Julian Assange is happy. I think part of the reason it didn't do well is that the trailers weren't all that intriguing for a story that kind of gripped in the world for how long. It didn't seem all that interesting. For the most part, I don't think that they would really make someone who wasn't interested in it to begin with to now say, hey, I'm going to go see that movie. They were kind of just basic trailers.
I'm somewhat surprised just looking over this that Prisoners in its 5th week is still staying ahead of a lot of that stuff. I mean, obviously we're talking about a huge drop from number 5 to number 6. We're going from near the 10 million mark down to like the 2 million mark and everything below it, which is pretty close. But for Prisoners in its 5th week to still be ahead of, for it to be ahead of The Fifth Estate, for it to be ahead of Runner, Rush, Machete Kills, Don John, I mean, it's done pretty well. They have to be somewhat happy with that.
It's that Hijacking factor, I guess. It's keeping them going.
But yeah, nothing super surprising this week.
So there's I would say maybe not failure, but the lack of success for Escape Plan. Does that basically tell us that Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger are only interested in them if they're doing Expendables movies?
I was about to say, are they only interested in them if they're expendable?
Because they had The Last Stand that didn't do well, Bullet to the Head didn't do well. Even the Bruce Willis wasn't in the Escape Plan, but Die Hard, whatever number it was, 5, didn't do nearly as well as they were hoping. Seems like those 80s action stars were looking to have a big year, but all their movies kind of tanked pretty hard.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I wonder. Okay, besides Die Hard, all of those are kind of new IPs, new movies. So I'm wondering, and I mean, obviously Expendables was too, but the idea behind Expendables was we're just getting everybody that needs a paycheck. So I think that was like the draw for that one. I think that if Arnold were to step into like a Terminator movie, I think that would be a different thing.
Yeah, I can see that. How about the two out of like the kind of more the mainstream, I guess, the two biggest drops for the week, which would be Machete Kills in the second week, dropping almost 70%, and the other one I saw was The Family. I know that one's been out for a while, but that dropped almost 65%. Um, so Machete Kills was kind of like a 1 week thing, and I guess that's done. I don't know how much of a budget that had though.
not much. I mean, it. I don't think it released its budget. It's done by Robert Rodriguez, who has his own production studios. Most of that stuff is like filmed in his backyard. So I doubt its budget was high. I mean, it's not like they had a lot of stars and that. I mean, they had a lot of like Lady Gaga and Charlie Esvestez, Charlie Sheen and stuff. So its budget was probably paper thin. I mean, Robert Rodriguez is the king of making movies cheap and quickly. So I could see it making a lot of its money back just on Blu-ray and DVD release.
Did you expect it to drop that far in the second week?
I I did, honestly, just with everything else coming out. I think the people who wanted to see that would go the first weekend, and then I don't think there's repeat viewing. I don't see many people saying, "Oh, I need to see Machete Kills again." I think it's a one and done type of movie.
You know what I'm wondering, because we're talking about the box office right now, so I want to bring this up. Are either of you familiar with HSX.com, the Hollywood Stock Exchange?
I did that for a tiny bit. I was just really bad at it, so I stopped doing it.
What it is, Kevin, it's a website where you can buy stock in movies. Like you start off with it's all fake money, but they give you like $2 million to start off with, and you go and invest in movies. So like a share of like the next Avengers would be like $300 a share.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is you're trying to buy, stock in movies before they explode, and then basically it's a stock market for movies.
Right.
It's just really cool. Like I made so much money off the Avengers, and I didn't even know it. Because I'll check in like once a year, and I'll check in for like a month after that, and then I'll stop, and I'll like come back, and I'll have like a ton of money because they automatically delist your stock. Even if you don't sell it, they delist it. And usually it's for more than what you paid for it anyways, because it's was out and is popular. So you end up with like a huge chunk of money when you go back into it. And then you can like kind of pay attention to movie news, and you can see like how much a stock changes here or there, like casting news if an actor drops off and the stock dives on the movie. I remember, for instance, when I was on it last year, I had stock in G.I. Joe, and I had it at like $150 a share. And I was kind of like, okay. And it kept going up. And then Paramount was like, oh, we're delaying it. And the stock crashed I saw that, and I immediately sold the stock I had in it at $150 a share, and it crashed, and it went to like $50 a share. And so I bought all the stock back that I had sold at $50 a share, and just like waited. I haven't gone back to see how much I actually made off of it or anything like that. But I was just curious, because I know like it's a fun thing for like movie. What you do, Dan, is you take your money and you buy stuff like long picture, and then just leave it alone and come back later.
Yes,
Sounds interesting.
I would get too antsy and just like buy stuff every day, and so I was just like, but yeah, I guess if you just like set it and forget it, as they say, it might be the better method.
Yeah, I'll put a link for that in the show notes too, if any movie people out there are interested in playing the Hollywood Stock Exchange. So,
alrighty, I think that's pretty much it for box office. So we'll pass this over to Kevin. So what are the headlines for this past week?
Not a ton of them. We got about a half dozen here that I just wanted to briefly touch on. Some people might find interesting. I find it interesting that you kind of segued somewhat into it with what you were watching by talking about Matt Johnson. And his The Dirties, which came out earlier this year, because apparently he is being linked to a film that possibly could be coming out at some point. This whole era that we live in, where people want to capitalize on nostalgia. Usually we're seeing it, with cartoon remakes and reboots and stuff like that. But book series is not to be left untouched, as we've seen with like the Narnia books, etc. And apparently the latest rumor is that there may be a series of films, or at least one film based on the book series, the Encyclopedia Brown, which I remember reading from Donald Sobel back in whatever it was, elementary school, I guess. And there's 28 books that each have about 10 stories in them. I don't know how many of those books I had, but I read them religiously for a while. So apparently there may be an Encyclopedia Brown movie coming soon. There was one that was linked with Ridley Scott in the early 2000s that died, but now apparently Matt Johnson is supposed to pen a script for it, although that's not confirmed. I don't know if any of you guys read those books or not, but I don't know if this would be a big hit with kids or not, because
I think it'd be capitalizing on the Sherlock Holmes craze that's going on right now.
That could, yeah, if it kind of piggybacks off that a little bit.
The way you just described the books to me, though, why is it not a TV show?
Yeah, that's what I would have thought would have been the easier draw. And for those people that don't know who Encyclopedia Brown is, it's basically like a kid who solves, like just little tiny petty stuff.
It's Veronica Mars. I think another analogy is I think Veronica Mars was kind of patterned around Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah. But the books were somewhat well written for a kid, and I just don't know how many people would what the name recognition would be really to carry this. But I'd be interested to see what happens with it. But I wouldn't expect too much. Dan, did you ever read these books, or are you familiar at all with the character?
No, when I saw the headline, I thought it was like the rival to Encyclopedia Britannica. I had no idea.
It was kind of like when I was a kid, you had like the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew. You had like the Wayside Stories, and then you had Encyclopedia Brown. Like those were some of the things. Like I know now, obviously, kids grew up in this most recent generation with Harry Potter and Twilight and all these other types of books. But those were the book series that I remember from when I was a kid. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe some of our listeners can chime in on some of the other books book series that they read growing up in our generation, I guess, and which ones might make good movies or TV shows outside of Encyclopedia Brown. This one isn't completely movie related, but I wanted to just touch on it because it is kind of piggybacking off of the popularity of the last two Star Trek movies. Apparently, Roberto Orci, was it Orci or Orci?
I say Orci.
Orci is trying to champion a new Star Trek television series. The tweet that got sent out was that Bob just told me they've had a meeting with CBS to revive Star Trek on TV. This is something that I've been wondering why it wasn't done already. Enterprise ended in 2005, and it was really, so we've had 8 years without a Star Trek television series, which has never happened in my life, obviously. And with those movies coming out, I was kind of surprised that there hasn't been more talk of a television series. I know Michael Dorn has been trying to do some stuff involving like Worf and a series related to that, and I believe one of the original cast members from the original TV series is doing something as well, kind of like his own project. But what do you guys think of the potential of a Star Trek series, and would it have to be related to the movies that are currently being produced?
Well, I shared my thoughts on this on Altered Geek with Steve. So if Dan wants to go first, I can summarize my thoughts here.
I actually listened to that, so I kind of have an idea of what you're gonna say. But I am not a huge Star Trek fan, so I would be kind of interested in seeing it. I would assume it would be related to that movie universe in some way. Maybe what they do with Shield, similar, where it's characters that exist in the same world, but you don't necessarily need those main characters, and maybe sometimes you can have a cameo from a Spock or Aurora or something pop in here and there. But I would, if they're gonna do it, I think personally I prefer it to exist in the current cinematic universe in some way.
Yeah, I think that too. Kevin, are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. No, what I had said on Alter Geek Unlimited was that I think that because Steve and I had talked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we kind of kept bringing everything back under the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. idea, which was kind of repetitive. But I feel like we might start getting more of these. I do hope Star Trek comes back to TV. I would really like Star Trek to come back to TV. I would also really like to see more in this universe, and because I do enjoy the Star Trek universe. I don't think you need to worry about bringing the cast down from the silver screen onto the small screen, because I don't know about you, Kevin, but I actually enjoyed Voyager, and I also enjoyed Enterprise.
I haven't had a chance to really see those in their entirety. I saw, I know the classic series. I know Next Generation. I know Deep Space Nine, and then I kind of got. I guess I just kind of swayed away from it a little bit. But go ahead with your thought on Voyager.
Well, but I'm just saying, like it's not always about a particular cast for me. It's just more about the stories that they're able to tell, and kind of like how I said about Agents of Shield. One of my hopes for it was that it would bring more of the human aspect of the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe into the limelight, which it is more or less. Maybe a new Star Trek series could do that for the Star Trek films that are on the screen, because one of the things that's kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the new movies is just how small they feel. How small Starfleet actually feels as a collaboration among alien races and everything like that. It just all feels really small, and I feel like if you had a TV series that kind of ran in the background or whatever and gave subtle nods to events in the movies, that it would just help flesh it out even more.
I would love. I mean, this is two things here. The first thing, obviously, the fanboy in me. My favorite series is Next Generation, so I am very interested in the kind of the ideas that I've read about Michael Dorn's potential, whatever he's doing. I don't know if it's going to actually be a series or a web thing or whatever, but I'm interested in that. And I do, like, the fanboy in me would love to see a new series with some type of like with one cast member from Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or someone like that, like Jonathan Frakes or Michael Dorn or something like that. But that's more the fanboy in me. As far as tying in with the movie, I think it would be very interesting. I don't know how well this would actually go over with the populace or whatever, but I think it would be a clever way to both tie into the movie and not necessarily need any of the cast members from the movie. And something that's never been done in the Star Trek universe, from what I've seen, is and obviously I'm already claimed that I don't know much about Voyager or Enterprise, so if it happened in there, but I'd like to see the whole series told from a different perspective, and instead of being told from the crew of the Federation, to be told from like the viewpoint of the Romulans or the Klingons or some alien race that does have contact with the Federation, that does have interaction with maybe some of the stuff that goes on with the movie, but told from a different standpoint, or set on a planet of some sort outside of like the Earth-like planet. I think that would be an interesting way to go and kind of be able to be in that same universe but avoid some of the problems of it. And we've never seen that. It's always been a crew on an Enterprise, so maybe that wouldn't go over well. But I'd be interested to see what kind of direction they go with this.
No, I can get that. I'm just saying, like, I don't necessarily. It's kind of like what I was saying. I don't necessarily need my characters to be on a ship.
Right.
Like
that's what I'm saying. If it was like more so based on like a planet or something, that'd be interesting to me.
So, and yeah, I would just like to see the more human side of it. I would even like, because one of my favorite shows recently that just kind of went off the air earlier this year was the Clone Wars, the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and I liked all the stuff that they did in there to add to the characters, like all the stuff that they basically added, all the stuff that was missing from the movies in like 5 seasons, and that entire run of that series kind of redeems any negative thing that people might have about the prequels.
Yeah.
And I just think that they might be able to do the same thing with if the two universes are connected, if they connect the TV universe with the silver screen, I feel like they might be able to accomplish the same thing. I think not having them connected right now, especially with all the other interconnectivity that's going on with like Agents of Shield and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and I think there was one other. Well, like the Clone Wars is continuity with the prequel stuff, and like the new Star Wars Rebels is going to be continuity with events
Right.
between episodes 3 and 4. I think people are kind of getting used to the idea of
Transformers was trying to kind of do that too with the Fall of Cybertron or Cybertron and Prime and stuff. Not saying they did it successfully, but that seems to be the trend.
right.
Trying to
I
connect
think
to video games and shows and.
I just think people are more. I think if someone sees Star Trek, they kind of expect it now to have something to do with the other one, which is kind of. It's actually going to be kind of interesting to see how the mainstream audience accepts. Like when I say mainstream, I mean not like the geeks that already are aware of this, but like Ben Affleck being cast as Batman. Like, how is the mainstream audience going to, like, it's going to be. Wait, I thought Christian Bale was Batman. Well, even my dad, who is not like a big movie geek or anything like that, the first thing he asked me about a movie when I say something's coming is he's like, did they change anybody? And I'm like, no, they actually did it right this time. They didn't change anybody. He goes, okay, good, I'll go see it.
Nice.
So
other news we have, let's talk about a couple sequels here. First and foremost here, Avatar sequels apparently going to finally begin filming in October of next year. The interesting thing I kind of read or saw in this article was that the final 3 films will be shot at once. This is according to Sam Worthington. We're going to start this time next year, and we will do 2, 3, and 4 in one shoot. We'll do them simultaneously. I'll be grateful if it finishes.
wait a minute. I thought they. So wait, wasn't the first one? Didn't we have an article last week where the first one's supposed to come out in 2015? Isn't it like
That's
15,
what,
16,
yeah, they're
17?
just starting to. It says they're just starting to film in October of 2014.
Right, but the turnaround on these movies is sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, if
whatever.
they're starting to film and they're going to try to get one within a year, that. But this article says it's going to not hit until December 2016. So maybe stuff's been delayed from that first article that we read. But I find it interesting that they're going to try to film three of those back to back.
Well, I mean, there's a. I don't think it's that. I think that there's a like they're not gonna. It's an Avatar movie. How much of that is actually shot? Like, it's you have to understand like how much of that is ILM working on that for years versus them showing up in a mocap suit.
True.
Doing a couple. I don't want to say just a couple scenes, and I'm not trying to demean what Avatar actually accomplished with its visuals or anything like that. It's just there's, if I remember correctly, the original Lord of the Rings, essentially all 3 movies were shot at the same time as well, but each movie was edited one at a time, and reshoots were done like while they were reshoots were done as needed. So once Lord of the Rings hit theaters, they opened up the cans for Two Towers and started editing Two Towers and doing reshoots. And then once that hit theaters, it was, we're going to go work on Return of the King. And I think that's the way that they're doing The Hobbit as well. Because it went from being 2 movies to being 3, and they decided it was going to be 3, I think, a month before The Hobbit actually hit?
Yeah, I think that's right.
So it's doing 3 movies at once. At one point in time, it was a feat, but
with a movie like this, it seems like a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, I mean, especially since Weta's used to working like that from the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff like that. So it's 3 movies at one time, but then you have to realize, okay, they're going to shoot 3 movies at one time, and then they're going to take 3 years. It's going to be 3 years before the last one even hits the shelves.
Right. What that does do, though, sometimes, when they're doing those, when they're filming wise, so far prior to when the films are actually coming out, usually we will see some casting rumors and stuff, not just about the second one, but possibly 3 and 4, depending on how tight they can keep the ship. How about that crazy rumor that's in that article swirling that Cameron wanted to reunite with his Terminator star in one of the sequels, but Fox apparently denied them. I don't know how much that could actually be true, but that just seems silly.
I didn't know anyone could deny James Cameron anything. Wait, I didn't think you could do that. I thought that was against the rules in Hollywood.
Dan, your thoughts on Avatar sequels?
I feel like we've been talking, not like us, but people in general have been talking about Avatar sequels since Avatar came out. And I'm a little hesitant when it's an actor saying they're going to begin shooting. I'll feel more confident that it's actually happening when James Cameron says they'll begin shooting, because I feel like he's gone back and forth with it. Like, he says he has other things he wants to do before he does Avatar, and he has his names attached to other films. So I mean, it could happen. I'm not saying it's incorrect article by any means, but I don't know. I feel like this is Sam Worthington too, looking at his career recently and saying, I need Avatar 2 to happen, so I'm going to try to will it into existence. Like Vin Diesel does that a lot too. Like he'll like the Riddick movies came out simply because he pulled enough weight and pulled together enough money to make those movies happen. That's the only reason why like a Riddick movie came out. Like we have 3 of them, so I feel that's a similar situation here.
I don't. I think the Riddick movies are a little more special than I Need a Paycheck. Because it's one is the actor needs a job, the other one is an actor that really liked that character and wants to make more movies in that universe.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Riddick was Vin Diesel needed a job. It's more so he wants that character to live on more and more. And
okay,
yeah, I'm saying like if it wasn't him pulling the strings and him putting in the groundwork, Riddick is never happening, because Chronicles of Riddick was a huge box office disaster, but he pushed his weight around and physically, and I think he was actually behind the production of that for most of it as well. So
I think it was him and the director that was like they came together for Pitch Black, and they loved that character, and they tried to go all out with you were right, Chronicles of Riddick wasn't the success that they wanted it to be. They went all out with it, and it was kind of became nothing. And Vin Diesel was like, I want to make another one, I want to do this, and there's always interest because they've had several really good video games with the character that Vin Diesel was behind and stuff like that, so the audience was there for it. And I think that's one of the reasons that Fast and the Furious got the life that it did, was because he was trying to get money to make another he was trying to put together enough money to get another Riddick movie made.
Yeah, and
so he saved. I can't really say he did, but I feel like he saved Fast and the Furious.
But yeah, Avatar. I'll be curious when it happens. Hopefully soon. Just it seems the last thing I heard about it was that they're gonna go underwater with the Avatar 2. So I think that would be interesting. I think there's a lot to that world to explore, but. I mean, James Cameron is notorious for waiting for sequels. I mean, the difference, like, how long was it between Terminator and Terminator 2? I mean, that was like a decade before that came out. So he does this a lot.
Speaking of exploring worlds that we've just barely seen, scratching the surface of another Pacific Rim 2 apparently is already being written. We've already kind of mentioned this in previous weeks here, but this is from Del Toro himself that he is writing it. It hasn't been greenlit yet one way or the other, but he's saying that he and Travis Beacham are writing it regardless. The decision to greenlight it or not, as he says, is above his pay rate, but they're going to start writing it regardless. I would say there's little to no chance that there's not going to be a sequel to Pacific Rim.
I just hope it doesn't become another Hellboy for him. And I'm not saying that the Hellboy movies are bad. I'm just saying that he had to fight. We just talked about Vin Diesel with Chronicles of Riddick, but he had to kind of do other things and move things around, and so he was able to make Hellboy 2. He had to do a lot of other things that he may not have wanted to do to get that done. So I'm just kind of hoping that Pacific Rim becomes like an actual commodity and not something that he has to fight tooth and nail for.
Yeah, and I think how it's doing overseas and some of the factors, I think they'd be foolish not to allow this, especially with, I don't know, like, it's kind of like what the article says, and I agree with it a lot. I love the fact that this was this was an original thing that did really well, that didn't need to rely on, nostalgia or some other thing that came before it. And I think it's one of those that's over time is just gaining more and more fans. And now that's being released, last week on DVD, Blu-ray, etc., I think it's just going to gain more and more fans. And people are fanatic that like that film, so I think a sequel will be excellent.
I would like to see the fanboy dream of the Jaegers versus Godzilla, but the Godzilla that was in that trailer is way bigger than any of the Jaegers.
Yeah,
They could have like a Jaeger Zord, right? When they all combine to one big gigantic Jaeger.
Stop.
Yeah, don't ever say that again.
No, but yeah, I hope they make Pacific Rim too. I mean, like you mentioned, I could see it being a movie that hits a lot of people who didn't see in theaters picking it up on Blu-ray and DVD. And you mentioned the overseas, and it was huge in China. I mean, it broke records, it broke bank in that country. And movie studios are looking at China as a huge market right now. So I'm sure it will happen. I'm curious if they'll like cut down the budget some, just to be on the safe side. But Del Toro is one who I think he can do a lot of great things even with a limited budget. So that is a world I really want to go back to. So hopefully it'll happen.
Yeah. Any other headlines you guys want to talk on, or should we go to the casting calls?
Yeah, let's move on to the casting calls.
All right. I'll let you guys kind of take the superhero one there for Ant-Man and Wasp, and any other superhero casting rumors that you guys have been up on in the last week. What are your thoughts on some of those rumors?
Well, I know that the two. Well, there's a couple big ones right now. I mean, the big one is, like you mentioned, is Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Ant-Man, or not Paul Walker, but Paul Rudd. Seems like those were the two names that were being thrown around for that character, which is interesting. So it sounds like, based on that casting, that they're not going the Hank Pym route, or more so the newer Ant-Man. I mean, I could be wrong, just because Hank Pym is a character who's kind of a jerk, really.
He's a wife beater. Don't exactly. Yeah, he beats his wife. You don't have to tiptoe around it.
Yeah, he's a horrible human being. He's questionable. He has questionable morals, to say the least. But he can be a very unlikable person. So if they are going Hank Pym, I don't see Gordon-Levitt really doing that character justice. He could, by all means, but he has such a likable quality to him. He's kind of reminds me of like Tom Hanks, where he's like America's like poster boy. Where I couldn't see him playing a wife beater. Not knowing they even have that aspect in the Avengers films, but they probably wouldn't. But personally, if those are the two people, I'd rather Paul Rudd. I like both of them, but I think Paul Rudd has that timing and has the capability to stand toe to toe with a Robert Downey Jr., that he can go tit for tat with him. I think more so than Joseph Gordon-Levitt. With he comes from more of a comedic background. He does a lot of sketch comedy, so he's used to that type of give and take. And I could see them ad-libbing a lot and making for a lot of great organic moments. So it does seem like an odd casting, but I'd be okay with Paul Rudd as Ant-Man.
Yeah, I'll take Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I don't see Joseph Gordon-Levitt getting it, just because I think he's firmly in Warner Brothers' pocket, and Marvel is notoriously cheap. But yeah, the other one was that it's not on our list here, but it's the Fantastic Four casting that we talked about last week.
Right.
Michael B. Jordan has actually been cast as Johnny Storm, which, as we've said before, I think we're all okay with here.
Yeah.
So,
any other superhero casting rumors that we want to talk about?
Not that I know of. I think that's pretty much. I know we have it here too. Tom Hanks joked about wanting to be in a superhero movie. I don't see that ever happening. Maybe as like a Funny or Die skit or something, but I don't see him actually being, or maybe like a voiceover villain. But
he could be a voice in Incredibles 2.
There you go. But yeah, I think that was him just being playful.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought it was kind of interesting. One of the Jurassic World casting rumors. Now, I completely buy Simpkins being in that film. And for you guys that don't know, Ty Simpkins was the little kid in Iron Man 3. So I could see him easily fitting into like a kid that was involved in whatever. I don't know what the setting is or what any type of plot is for this Jurassic Park movie, but I could see him fitting in there. Interesting to see Josh Brolin's name connected to that.
But I think that adds a little bit of credibility to the movie.
Yeah.
Linked with it. I don't know because it hasn't been said that he's actually signed for it. That adds a little bit of weight to it. I mean, I like the Jurassic Park movies. They get a little there are elements. I really like the first one. There are parts of the second one that I like, and there are parts of the third one that I actually do enjoy. Um, but regarding Jurassic World, I did not, for some reason, I never bothered to look up who the director was. I did not realize that he had done Safety Not Guaranteed. So now I'm more looking forward to Jurassic World than I was.
An interesting thing about that connection with Safety Not Guaranteed, they also talked about Jake Johnson, who's like in New Girl, and I think we talked about him a little bit last week, who might be in that film as well. And I doubt he'd be like the main character, but more of like the Jeff Goldblum character in that, more the wacky, crazy scientist that provides a lot of the humor. I'd be all for that because I'm a huge Jake Johnson fan, and having a background and working with the director previously, it does seem like a legitimate casting, like something they would do.
Yeah, it's saying that Josh Brolin is in talks for the lead role. It's saying that Ty Simpkins and Nick Robinson would play brothers. Rumors for Bryce Dallas Howard being involved. According, you brought up the director, and there was a quote from him in this article too. I'll just read that real quick. He says, "This is not a paycheck gig for me, and it's not the movie that I'm making so I can make the movies that I really want to make. I actually want to make a kick-ass Jurassic Park movie."
As long as it doesn't have the lasers like some of the other Jurassic Park scripts had.
Does this movie need, or would you want it, or would you very much not want any of the cast members from the original or the second one to be involved in this whatsoever?
I think the island is more of the character that I'm interested in, and that sounds kind of weird, but there's two islands. I'd like to see just. I keep forgetting which islands were in which movies, but I'd like to see them go back to the island from the first movie, and just see some like what the place looks like now, after it's been abandoned. I think that's where they went in the third one, but I am not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch them all. I know a lot of fans are trying to push for Goldblum to be involved somehow, some way. Is that the one that they need if they're going to get one?
As long as his daughter doesn't come along.
As long as there's no aerial gymnastics to kick a raptor in the face. I don't know if they need any characters from the other movie. I mean, Jurassic Park is one of my favorite films of all time. I can't remember in the third one if what's his name, the guy who ran the park, died.
He dies in the second one.
But I don't know. I would be fine if they didn't bring any of the characters back, just because if you're trying to do something completely new and different, I don't know if
I think they would have to. They wouldn't need necessarily the characters. Kind of like, I guess we're having the same discussion with a lot of stuff here, but I think as long as they don't ignore, that those characters existed and there's some type of reference to at least some member of it or the group that came to the island originally, if they are in fact going to be going back to the island or something like that, which I agree with. I think that would be the intriguing way to go. But yeah, I don't think they're needed. But
I wonder if they're gonna do like a soft reboot where they just don't even mention the past movies and it's just this thing that happens. I wonder that. But
see, I think it's a type of story that you don't need. Like the fact that they have these islands where the dinosaurs existed and then they're escaping the island, like you can do a reboot without having to ignore what existed, because it's just natural that these islands exist and that stuff's probably going on there, and we can revisit it with a whole new group or whatever. Like I don't see why, when it's so naturally kind of put out there, that you would need to ignore. I mean, I understand what you're saying with like a soft reboot, but I don't think you would. I still think you could do it and somehow have it still connected without having to ignore that they took place.
Well, that's why I'm saying just go back to. That's why I'm saying more interested in what island they use than I am about them getting cameos from like Sam Neill or Jeff Goldblum. Because
as long as they don't have those kids, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean that to me, the whatever island they use kind of means more than the subtle nod or the wink, because it's just kind of I don't know. At a certain point, it's kind of like, wouldn't those people just want to be done? Like, and I don't really want to see the phone call where someone calls up, Alan Grant. And he says, "No, I'm not going back to that island." That's just waste. That's just
no, I don't want to see that.
I don't want to see that. And it's just, I'd rather see just a whole, like, go back to one of the two islands that you've already used. Just tell a new story with a new cast. It's kind of like, I think that's might be what Dan was getting at with like a soft reboot, where it's like it at least takes place in the same universe, the same on like the same island, but you don't get you might still have InGen in the background or whatever, but you don't get or someone might have a book that was written about by Alan Grant or something like that, because I think in one of them they mentioned that somebody wrote a book about what happened on the island.
It would be more interesting to me just to, like you said, to go back to the island, and you don't even hardly need to mention it, but just for them to come across, like, they don't even have to recognize it or take notice of it, but for it to be in the scene or something where you notice like an item or a place that they were at.
I want to see the spoonful of Jello that the kid dropped when he spotted the raptor.
Or
I rewatched
shaving cream.
Yeah, or the
lost in the first.
The like a Jeep or something that's just kind of like destroyed somewhere in the corner. I rewatched the first one. Like I said, I'm kind of need to brush up on the second and third one, but I rewatched the first one about a year ago, maybe, or within the last year. I don't know if there's a more annoying character than that girl in the first film when you rewatch it. I didn't remember her being as annoying when I watched it originally, but watching it back, she drove me nuts.
It's a Unix system.
The way she freaks out is just like, oh my goodness, you're I don't know. But anyways, going on to, unless there's anything else, we can go on to some trailer talk as far as new trailers or clips that have been released in the last week. And where do you want to start, Dan? Which of those have you seen, or did you see any of those?
I saw them all. I guess a good place to start, which we teased in the open, which was the non-stop trailer, the most recent Liam Neeson like action thriller that seems to be hitting theaters shortly.
Yeah, that was interesting. I saw that too. Then the headline on the article was, Liam Neeson kicking ass and even, I don't know what it said, in the air or on a plane or something like that. It seemed interesting. It kind of goes to that question that we kind of asked last week. Liam Neeson, even if some of his movies aren't very good, is someone that I'll usually give a chance. I like his acting. I like his speaking. When he does voice acting and stuff like that, I like hearing that, or narration. So I'll probably give it a shot. I'm a fan of his. I'm not going to expect great things from it or anything, but the trailer looked interesting.
Yeah, it looks like a schlocky, like revenge or terror in the air type of movie. Like Taken meets Snakes on a Train, basically, or Snakes on a Plane. It's interesting. I just find it interesting because Liam Neeson's having this like second act to his career. He was this acclaimed actor, in all these Oscar-nominated movies, and now suddenly he's become like
action star,
our generation's action star, which is interesting. So, and he does, I think, that credibility. I think for a movie like Nonstop, which if you put like Nick Cage in that movie, that's going straight to DVD. But with Liam Neeson, you're like, maybe it could be good.
No, I'd go watch Nonstop with Nick Cage.
Is it interesting that in an era, what seems like an era of 80s or past action stars that are trying to, like the older, like, Bruce Willis is older, Sylvester Stallone's older, Arnold's older, they're all trying to do this, and then, strolling along, like you said, Liam Neeson, who is, that age group, is just doing it with success without, like...
I think it's a difference of the character. I think that, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't really... Right now, like, okay, Stallone and Schwarzenegger came out of the 80s when it was, like, the muscle-bound guys doing stuff, and that I don't think that's really the thing anymore. I think kind of what Liam Neeson is tapping into is the same thing that Bruce Willis tapped into when he first started getting the action stuff, which was just an everyman in the situation. But for some reason, I think that audiences might just be worn out on Bruce Willis, or that role is just the same. And obviously Liam Neeson is kind of heading in that direction with his characters, but I think that he just keeps working with different directors that have a different sense of like style than like someone that would do like a Die Hard movie or something would, and that might be what makes them play a little better.
I'm trying to think of who else in the acting world could have been in Taken and been as accepted as Liam Neeson was in that role.
Well, what's really weird about trying to imagine a casting thing is once it's actually been cast and you've seen the movie, it is kind of hard to see something. Like if you listen to the commentary track for American Beauty, It was supposed to be Tom Hanks instead of Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, and that's almost impossible to imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure if just it was a combination of Liam Neeson just not being who you would expect, but still being able to pull off the kind of the badass walk and talk, and that it was like a perfect storm where he hit at the right time where people were tired of the other thing, and he just kind of wasn't the unsuspecting guy that everyone was like, oh, he's pretty good at that. Or if it's just the fact that he's just a pretty darn good actor.
Or it could be the fact that, forgive me, I will try to make it a point to watch the movies, but I haven't actually seen Taken. I've heard great things about it, but is it just me, or do his characters come off as more James Bondy than like an action hero, like an action star, like a normal action character? Because I don't really think of James Bond as an action hero.
It's not James Bond either. It's closer to the Bruce Willis Die Hard character.
Okay.
It reminds me more of like a Charles Bronson, who's like more. He's very intimidating. He's like shoot first and ask questions later type of guy.
If you took Bruce Willis's John McClane and then you crossed it with some of the stuff that like Clint Eastwood's recent. Am I thinking of the right person? Gran Torino is Clint Eastwood, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, where he's just kind of the old intimidating guy. So you take like that old intimidating kind of that aura around him, and then cross it with a younger Bruce Willis Die Hard character. I think that's kind of what you get.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought, I didn't even know that this movie was being made, so I found the trailer interesting. Which other ones on the list did someone get a chance to watch and have a reaction to?
I actually caught all of them except for Grand Budapest Hotel and the Mandelas.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch either one of those, but Thor. I saw that trailer in the theater. I like that trailer more than the first one that they put out, because the first one there were a couple times where when I was previewing a movie and I'm sitting there next to the guy that I'm watching it with, and I would like slap my forehead or just sigh really loudly when Thor comes and gets Natalie Portman's character just comes and gets her, and then she ends up being put in peril. I'm like, why would you even do that? Like, you caused this problem yourself. That was like every time I saw that scene, it kind of just it took me out of the entire thing. And luckily that scene is not in the newest trailer. And you can definitely see that they got the guys from Game of Thrones to do Thor 2, because it definitely has, the world looks a lot grittier. It seems to be there a lot more like flavor in the visuals for what's being represented. I still have obviously I haven't seen the movie yet, but there's certain things that I'm seeing in the trailer that lead me to feel that I'm going to have the same issues with Thor 2 that I did with Iron Man 3, and I don't want to. I don't want to have those feelings. But Thor, I am looking forward to seeing Thor 2.
One of the ones that I saw that kind of, probably a couple here that kind of got me a little bit. I don't know why, but I've been trying to like somewhat avoid Thor trailers and clips and whatnot. I do that with random movies, and sometimes I want to see everything about them, and sometimes I try to stay away.
Well, there's only 2 for Thor, so.
Yeah, and so I have watched this one. I stayed away from the first one. I don't really know what the reasoning was there. But the trailer for Awkward Moment, I thought that was interesting, because we talked a little bit, I think, in the first week about romantic comedies and if they were dead or not, and this one seems to be somewhat like trying to combine or trying to get that romantic comedy that's maybe more suitable for today's audience. Maybe, I kind of got that vibe just a tiny bit, that it was a romantic comedy with a slight twist or a slight different type of feel to it. To try to maybe reinvent the genre in a way.
Well, I think it's a romantic comedy from the guy's point of view.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. I didn't think the trailer was fantastic or anything, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of take on that. And the other one, you said you didn't see it, but Grand Budapest Hotel. I'm sure, Dan, you have some comments on that one. That one seemed to be very interesting, just from the casting standpoint alone. the director for that one, you're familiar with a lot of his stuff, correct?
Well, yeah, Wes Anderson, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I've seen all
so
his films.
I think that has a lot of potential in it. It seems to be just kind of crazy insane. I like most of the people that are cast in it, so I am looking forward to seeing more about that. And then the only other one I wanted to talk about real quick before, Dan, you mentioned some. We don't talk about the animated stuff a lot, but Frozen, I don't get super excited about animated films these days. But I think Disney has kind of changed their mold here in the last couple years. I don't know a specific date, but with Tangled and now with Frozen and a couple things, it seems like they've shifted a little bit, because you kind of had the classic Disney era, then you had like the late 80s / 90s, from Beauty and the Beast all the way through like Mulan, Pocahontas, and some of that stuff, and then you kind of had the early 2000s, which I kind of lost interest in Disney altogether. But I'm starting to kind of take notice a little bit with Tangled and Frozen and some of the stuff they've been doing recently. And now the trailer for this one kind of has the tagline, like the best or something, like you haven't seen Disney like this since The Lion King. I don't know. That's kind of a tall feat to achieve, but we'll see where that one goes. But I do find it interesting, and the music focus in that again. So I am interested to see how that does. So that one and Grand Budapest Hotel were kind of the two that stuck out most with me. Dan, which ones did you like to mention anything about?
Well, you talked about Grand Budapest Hotel, and that does 100% feel like a Wes Anderson film. It has his like playroom aesthetic that he's famous for, and it has this like quirky humor and a lot of his notable actors that are often in his movies, like Bill Murray, among many others, Adrian Brody. It's with some newcomers along the way. I do really like Wes Anderson. I think he does a lot of interesting things. He's a great director. So I'm always looking forward to what he has next. I loved his last film, and I think he's on an upswing. Like ever since Fantastic Mr. Fox, I think he's been, because he had a questionable films here and there with like Steve Azuzu and the Darjeeling Unlimited, but lately I think he's been on the right path again.
He did the summer camp one, right?
Yeah, with I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now. But yeah, he did that last year.
That was great.
Yeah. So I love, like, probably still my favorite film that he did was Rushmore. I think that's like a perfect movie. And then that's and I did also catch the new Paranormal Activity movie, which was what I found interesting is how like January and February have become the months for horror movies, and there's only one horror movie that we'll get to coming out in October, but January and February are full of them. It's just this odd turn that's been happening the last few years.
Well, I think Paranormal Activity wasn't the story behind that. They just missed this year. Like
it
started late and
yeah, it got postponed, and then there's actually Paranormal Activity 5. This is just a spin-off, I guess.
Yeah,
because it's not.
Any thoughts on Hercules at all?
It's not the Hercules trailer that I wanted to see. I was hoping it was the one that had The Rock in it.
Yeah, not the guy from Twilight. So,
Old Boy.
I think that movie looks
too. Yeah, Old Boy seems cool. That was a completely different take or different insight onto that movie from what you saw previously. I've been interested in that film for a while, so I can't wait for that one to come out.
Yeah, that was supposed to come out actually like around this time, but it got pushed back. So I can't wait for Old Boy.
Josh Brolin is just having a heck of a turn in his career recently.
Yeah, all you have to do is beat on Diane Lane.
That'll do it. All right. Any other trailer talk before we move on to our main attraction?
I got nothing.
All right, we're going to take another quick break here. You'll probably hear a nice ad break, and we'll come back to our main attraction as we discuss the latest remake of the horror classic Carrie.
Go to your closet and pray. No. Pray.
What if you had the power?
The other kids think I'm weird. If I concentrate, I can make things move.
To change everything.
Carrie? No!
What if...
Prom is next week. Maybe you want to go with me?
Your king and queen are...
You couldn't control it.
They can laugh at you.
Carrie.
right, and welcome back. Just so you are aware, we'll be discussing Carrie. Kevin has taken a little bit of leave of absence. He didn't have the opportunity to see the movie, so we didn't like hide him away or anything. He's just he's listening just like you are. So the movie that came out this week, of course, is Carrie. It's a remake. It's actually the second remake of the Stephen King novel. The original, which came out in the early 70s, and now it's coming out again. New cast, enhanced special effects, the whole 9 yards. So, Mike, I'm just curious, have you had any experience with any of the past Carrie movies at all?
Well, first, I didn't know that there were 2 Carrie movies, and I knew of the 1976 one with Sissy Spacek. I want to say I've seen the entire movie, but for some reason I can only remember like the first half of it, so I'm not entirely sure. Is the second one Firestarter?
No, there's actually a remake in 2001, Carrie, that no one remembers because it was really, really awful. But yeah, this is actually the second remake of Carrie.
Oh, okay. Did not know that, and I'm not seeing it on IMDb either. No, I mean, I had no. First of all, I have no love for the original one. Usually, I can watch a remake of a movie without comparing it too much to the original. I do wish that I had watched the original one prior to watching the remake, so I could see what changes were made to certain characters here and there, to the story. I will say that I did like the remake of Carrie. I do like Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's great. I think the only movie that I haven't made it through that I started watching that she's in is a movie that's on Netflix right now that has Blake Lively in it, and that's probably why I couldn't make it all the way through that movie.
That's understandable.
I think it's called Hillbilly or Hick, or
oh yes, Hick.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of stopped watching it halfway through because I couldn't stand any more of Blake Lively's character. But I liked it. I thought it was a good horror movie. I question I understand why it's rated R, and it's certainly not rated R because of language. It's more rated R because of the sheer amount of blood that is in the movie. I had a couple issues with the way that it might be like in the third act it went kind of Final Destination-y. And I really do like the Final Destination movies. I thought the gore or the violence got a little excessive, especially with like the car crash in the end and stuff like that. I did enjoy Julianne Moore. I thought she was the creepiest part of the entire movie. I didn't quite buy. We talked about wanting to sometimes you want to know more, and sometimes you get everything on, everything's told like through subtext, or it's really subtle and you have to pay attention and stuff like that. I felt like some of the characters were fleshed out, and then I felt like some of the characters there weren't enough things other than this is supposed to be the bad character, so they're going to be the bad character. And like I said, I wish I would have watched the original because I couldn't remember if anybody was actually nice to her in the original movie, or if everyone was just mean to her, and they decided to have people actually be nice to her and just get kind of caught in the crossfire between the people that were bullying her. I did like Chloe in this movie. I saw a tweet not too long ago about people not liking the movie where they cast a good-looking actress to play like a hideous character, and like the only thing that's wrong with them is they just have like glasses or overalls. Like the example they used was She's All That.
Yeah, that was actually on our comment for the episode.
Okay, yeah, okay, so that works. I think Chloe is one of those actresses that I don't think she's like it's kind of weird to actually talk about her this way, but I don't think she's like exceptionally. She's not like Scarlett Johansson or something like that, but I think she's she can look pretty, but it's not hard to she's not like outlandishly pretty like some actresses are. So I thought I think she can play like the quirky the quirky girl role without her having to be, without, people complaining too much that, oh, she looks good no matter what, because no, there's a definite transformation. She goes through like 3 transformations in this movie. She goes from like being the awkward teenager that's been locked up in a closet most of her life to reluctantly accepting like just people being nice to her, and then she goes to complete raging bitch, more or less, by the end of the movie. But what did you think, Dan?
I am very indifferent towards Carrie. I like you. I saw the original, but it's been years, so I really didn't remember much. It is streaming on Netflix, so I thought maybe I'll go back to it. But I thought actually decided consciously not to, just so I can go into it with no baggage, no like comparing it to the original, because I think sometimes you get caught up in that and you can miss what's actually happening on screen. So I just I went in fresh, just try to like, all right, let's see what this does. And with horror remakes or remakes in general, my idea is what I kind of look for is like, okay, give me reason why this exists. Like, give me reason why we're getting this now. And even with my little like knowledge of the original, I don't think it really answered that question all that well. It reminds me of just like you probably appreciate this being like a video game fan. When they do like the HD copies of the old games where it's pretty much the same game, they just make the graphics a little bit better. This is what it kind of reminded me of. It's almost too faithful to the original, where all the beats are so strong, and you're just waiting for those moments to happen. Like, it doesn't really change all that much, and I don't understand, like, at the end of the day, like, if this movie came out, if this Carrie came out without the old Carrie, would it be as an icon into the genre as the original? Maybe. I don't see it as much. There were certain things I liked. Like you mentioned, the performances here are good. They are very good performances. Chloe Grace Moretz is excellent in that role. I do think, though, you talked about her being the shy, like, ugly girl. That is played up a little bit. Like, her slouching, like, I thought she was trying to put her shoulders in her elbows. Like, she was someone like her. It was just played to 11. But everyone in this movie is. Everyone's on 11. Like, the bad, like you mentioned, the bad people are all horrible people who are really bad. And, like, the Julianne Moore is completely, utterly nuts. How people haven't taken a kid away from her by now, I don't know. But I did enjoy that. I don't know. At the end of the day, I was just waiting for things to happen. Nothing really stood out to me. The characters all seemed just really paper thin. Like, they just fit into these roles, and there really wasn't much to them, minus like Carrie, of course, like the bad girl who was super evil. This her one, not friend, but this one blonde girl who is helping her out and is everything great about her, and it just, no one felt real. Was my issue. Like, I don't have an issue with that when you have like the character of Carrie and her mother, when they're like the oddballs, but when everyone is so unnatural, and everyone feels like they're just this archetype or blown up stereotype, it makes those characters stand out a little less. So that was my main issue with it. But I don't know. I didn't hate it by any means. Like, I thought it was fine. It hit the horror beats like it should. The gore stuff, I guess it's part of the lore. I did too have an issue with, I don't know, like the justification of her flipping that switch and becoming such a evil person bent on the destruction that she causes. Like, I don't know, based on the character up to that point, I didn't see that character going that far with it. Like, people just became okay with murder really easily, and like I don't know. I guess that's part of her character, that she has this thing about her, but they were leading up to the point where she was controlling it. She was becoming more in control. I never got the sense that she was evil until that final moment. And I don't remember if the original was like that, but I don't know. That one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, I was looking for something in the movie to fundamentally change from the original, just to put like a different spin or a take on it. And I definitely agree with what you were saying about how she does flip a switch and she just goes crazy. And I thought for a second, because I was trying to this is why I kind of wish I would have watched the original ones. It would just be fresh in my memory, because I was like, was it a whole group of them that were like ganging up on her and like pulling a giant prank on her, and they set her up to get the pig's blood spilled on her. Spoiler if you don't know anything about Carrie, but
it's in the trailer.
Yeah,
so
well, that's your fault. But in this one, some people are out and they're actually being nice and they're actually caring for her, and then other people are actually plotting against her. And I thought, because of them showing her getting some kind of handle on her abilities and some people actually being nice to her, I thought she would just kind of take it out on those that wronged her. But she flips out and takes it out on everybody, except she does still have a little bit of control, because she starts to selectively spare some people from her wrath. So I was when I was watching, I was just like, how like you said, how does this set itself apart from the original, or why does this exist? I was looking for that, just for her to get like a vendetta on the mean girl, more or less. And like I said, I do agree with everything that you said about the characters outside of Sissy Spacek, or not Sissy Spacek, but outside of Julianne Moore and Chloe. Everyone, like I said, the mean girl was just, or the bad girl was just bad just because, and of course she's got brunette hair, so she's just bad. And the blonde girl, who looks like an angel, is also, she's out to look for forgiveness, and like that's it. That's the way they are. I mean, you get little insights as to why the character, more so the bad girl, you get more insights as to why she feels that, why she's just evil, because especially when her dad shows up for all of like 30 seconds, you get kind of an insight as to why she is the way that she is. But I don't necessarily know that I wanted more from the supporting characters. I think I just wanted them to feel more real than they did.
Yeah, they do feel just, I don't know. I mean, the acting there isn't that strong, which is part of it. They just feel they feel too nice or just too evil. Just, they don't feel like the decisions that they're making like a normal teenager would make. They kind of go back to what you're talking about. We mentioned like updating this and what they do different. There's a lot, like bullying you see that a lot, especially in movies that deal with teenagers. It seems like the go-to, it's like, oh, what can we do to make this for the new age? It's like, oh, social media. Like we'll put it, oh, there'll be a video and it'll be on social media. Like that's like the easy go-to. I feel like when you see any remake, that's like, that's what they're going to say. Like, oh, we're going to like Scream 4, like that did that too, where it's like, oh, the difference this time is that they're going to film it and put it online. And it's just a theme that I feel like they keep going back to again and again, not just in horror movies, but a lot of movies in general. And I get that because that's part of like today's culture, especially for adolescents. But if your remake,
right. Well, one thing I did notice about the movie, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, because they showed like the cell phones and the cameras and stuff like that, but all like they had a weird setting. All the cars in the movie were vintage for the most part. I think the newest cars that I saw were the limo and the kid's Jeep, or the newest ones. All the other ones were like 70s, 80s style cars. Which was really weird, juxtaposed with like everyone having like a cell phone, or like video being like the thing, or whipping out like a computer to upload the video. It was weird. Sometimes I was like, is this set in the 70s, like back when the first one was, or is it set now? And then someone whips out a cell phone, I'm like, oh, it's set now. But yeah, I got that bullying thing, but at the same time though, I think it's only, I don't know if it's like trying to like raise awareness for bullying or whatever, because it's kind of the same thing that was happening in like the first Carrie. I mean, the beginning of the movie isn't any different than what the first movie was.
No, I agree. Like I just think it's just like, oh, we're gonna try to put a little bit of a different spin on it, and this is how. I mean, it makes sense because if that, if that scene were to happen today, that's probably what people would do, because most of the bullying today is often done online. I don't think it's some sort of statement or anything like that. I think it's just a way to try to set it aside from the other Carrie movie. But you just to touch it on a little bit, I think it's interesting too, because you have Chloe Grace Moretz, who was in another horror remake of, Let the Right One In with Let Me In, and this being a remake. And I do find it interesting because a lot of people said Let Me In didn't change that much, and I think this probably changed a little bit even less. But I did have a question though. With horror movies or horror movies in general, did you at all maybe find this scary in any way? I mean, that's always a question, right? When you come to a horror movie, like, is it scary?
No. Like I said, the creepiest part of this whole movie to me was Julianne Moore's performance, because she's just, like you said, she's a religious fanatic cranked to 11. In fact, I might even go so far as to say 12. Because she's just out of her mind for most of the stuff. And no, I wasn't like, I don't know. I was not scared at all. Like, I don't even think I was scared. I don't even know if I was like in suspense at all, because like you said, I was just kind of waiting for it to hit its beats.
It's more of like a revenge thriller than it is a horror film. I was never scared, but I never felt it was ever trying necessarily to be scary, because usually the people in peril were people that you weren't really fans of to begin with. So it's not like you felt sorry for them. So I don't think a horror movie needs to be scary to be good, but I just find it interesting. Like, this one didn't seem to even attempt to be, or if it did, it didn't do it all that well.
The only time I felt anything in the movie, I felt sorry for the pig.
True.
That's, yeah, I don't know what it was, but I'm not joking at all. But the only time I felt like anything like sad or any kind of emotion during the movie was definitely with the pig. I was just like, man, this is really cruel. Like, these people are really bad. Like, I was like, whoa, holy cow.
They killed Wilbur.
I was like, this is like psychotic behavior, like 101. Like, this is
exactly.
I was just like, I don't know. It was and that was the part that really kind of pushed it over the top. I did one, and I'm probably reading too much into this. The one thing that I did like was kind of the opening of the movie and the end of the movie. They kind of bookend each other. There's a scene, obviously right after Carrie's born, where I can't really talk about it too much without spoiling it, but her mom tries to kill her. And she stops. And in the beginning of the movie, it's kind of hard to tell, like, did she stop? Did Carrie make her stop? Did some force make her stop? That scene kind of replays again at the end of the movie. And I was almost waiting for the mom to have that redemptive quality like she did at the beginning of the movie. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's more so that redemptive quality happened to another character, or, it was, passed down to someone else, like you would say. Like, when the person who was now making the decision if she lives or dies, now kind of had to rethink her own actions in some ways.
So, yeah, it was just an interesting thing, and I'm pretty sure I only read into it as much as I did because I'm trying to come up with smart things to say to do this podcast.
It makes it a little bit more fun. But yeah, I really honestly don't have that much more to say about it. It's pretty much, it's a straightforward movie. It's exactly what you expect, and nothing more, nothing less is really what I came out for it. So would you recommend people seeing this in theaters, or do you think it's more of like a rental, or avoid it?
I think it's a good date movie. I think it's good for the season. I mean, it's not like you said, I don't think it's something that people are going to get scared of. I think some things get there were a couple. I mean, I think some of the stuff in the movie is genuinely funny because it's supposed to be funny, like the principal.
Yeah.
I thought he was great.
I also like the gym teacher. I did find her funny. So.
But like some of the stuff, like the event in the gym, they kept showing it again and again and again from multiple angles, and it was one take away from being laugh out loud funny. Kind of like the train scene in Super 8. it just kept going and going and going, and I ended up laughing at that scene in Super 8. It was, like I said, it was one takeaway from that. I think this time of the year, if you're going on a date or whatever, I think it's a good date movie. If you're absolutely not sure about it, then there's no harm in waiting until it shows up on Netflix. But I honestly would have paid to go see it. If I could go see, if my wife wanted to see it, what she says she doesn't, I would definitely go take her to see it.
Yeah, see, I would not probably recommend someone seeing it in theaters. I mean, like you mentioned, if you want like a movie that you could probably see with a friend or a date, yeah, then it's probably fine. But I think there's a lot better stuff out right now, and I don't know. I don't feel like it's something like I would ever watch again or return to by any means. So, if you're a huge horror fan or a huge Carrie fan or you want a horror fix, it's pretty much the only option at this point. So, if so, then go. But if not, I would say, see Captain Phillips, Gravity, maybe even The Fifth Estate. There's a lot out there right now.
Everyone just go see Gravity again.
Yes, go see Gravity twice, which I almost did, but I didn't this year. But yeah, so that's pretty much all of our takes on the remake of Carrie. If you agree or disagree, or feel free to comment on our website or send us an email. At the end of the show, we'll give you all of our contact information, so you'll have plenty of ways to letting us know how right or wrong we are. But we're going to take another little break here and come back with our end of the show as we look forward to upcoming releases and end with our credit conversation about actors that make you want to or not go to the movies. And we'll have a question for you for next week as well. See you in a little bit.
The Pull Bag is the GCRN's place for everything you need in the comic book world. We focus on new and current comics while also tackling a few back issues here and there. So join the entire GCRN crew and see what issues the hosts have with today's panels. You can find the Pull Bag on iTunes and geekcastradio.com. Make your great escape into comics.
All right, and welcome back. We're going to take a look at coming attractions as we look at the upcoming theater releases and DVD and Blu-ray releases. Starting off, coming to theaters this upcoming week, the two big releases are Ridley Scott's The Counselor and Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. Do any of you guys have any interest in those two movies?
Kevin hasn't said anything in a while.
I'll definitely see The Counselor. I need to see The Fifth Estate first, but I'll be seeing The Counselor before the year is over. I don't know if I'll be running out and seeing it immediately, but I will definitely be watching it at some point, just because it seemed interesting enough, and I love movies. I don't know if I've seen any of the Jackass things. I'm not saying that I have anything against them or that they're not funny. I just haven't ever had a desire to watch them. The trailer was humorous, but I won't be going to see it in the theater.
I'll check out The Counselor.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I guess I'll triple that. And Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa does look like it could be funny. I'm sure if you went with a group of friends, that'd be a good movie to go to while you're drunk. It does feel like that type of movie. But yeah, so that's I'll go with you guys. And the next. Also, in very limited release, it's Blue is the Warmest Color. I just brought that up because I've heard pretty good things about that. So that might be getting a wide release coming up. And that, again, is Blue is the Warmest Color, which I don't know if that's true. I would go with probably red, but I know. Anyway.
Yeah, me too.
And then coming out on DVD and Blu-ray, there's actually a great bit coming out this week.
Yeah, The Internship.
Exactly. Finally, long awaited. Those of the Linklater trilogy, the Before trilogy, Before Midnight is coming out on Tuesday. Have any of you guys saw any of the Before films, like Before Sunrise or Before Sunset?
No, I have not.
No, I haven't either.
They are. They have a certain crowd to them. If you like movies about relationships and a guy and a girl talking for about 90 minutes, they're your thing. But I really actually dug Before Midnight quite a bit. But you do have to see the other films before you'll really understand Before Midnight at all. And if you are in a horror mood, The Conjuring is also coming out. Have any of you seen The Conjuring?
Nope.
I have, and I actually dug The Conjuring quite a bit. There's actually a review for that and Before Midnight on geekcastradio.com that you can check out. I did enjoy it. It's done by James Wan, who did Insidious and the first Saw movie, and I was really impressed by that. And also coming out, like you mentioned, I gave it a year, and in The Internship, 2 comedies. One I give it a year. I've heard good things about. I have not seen it. The Internship, which was the Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn coming together again. That I'm guessing none of us saw.
I saw that in the theater, actually.
Oh yeah, how was it?
I mean, I thought it was funny. I mean, it wasn't quite what they were hoping for with the reuniting of the Wedding Crashers. Was that the last real big one?
Yes, that was the last
together?
movie that they were together with.
I mean, it didn't reach that level, but I liked the humor, so I enjoyed it. I mean, nothing to write home about.
And rounding out is Only God Forgives, which is directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who did Drive famously. I saw that. Actually do enjoy that movie, but it's nothing like Drive. It's more like Refn's earlier film, Valhalla Rising. Very little talking, very slow, very more so a visual experience than an actual narrative. So not a movie for everyone, but I did like that. And the last film coming out is The Way, Way Back. I talked about that last week in MWIRE Weekly, so I would recommend picking that up. If you want more information on that, feel free to check out last week's episode. So.
Definitely not the must-have for me as far as something I have to run out and buy like we had last week, which I didn't run out and buy it, but I will be getting Pacific Rim and a couple of the things that were released last week. But some decent films in there, but nothing I'm going to like be in line on Tuesday waiting for.
At this point, I just want to put this out there for the listeners and people that buy movies and stuff like that. At this point, I would hold off on buying a movie until Black Friday.
Yeah.
It's just way too close to, snag a movie today for like $25-$30 that you'll probably be able to pick up for $10 on Black Friday. It's just way too close.
Yep.
So
yeah, I'd rather spend more money now than waste my time. Not waste my time, but like deal with people on Black Friday.
Oh man, I love Black
See,
Friday.
I worked Black Friday for 9 years at Target, so it does not scare me at all.
I worked at Macy's, but I don't know. Like in some of those movies, like I would say The Way, Way Back and Before Midnight, I don't see those as films that you're gonna see on sale on Black Friday. I mean, I could be wrong, but you never know. Hey, I mean, you're true. I mean, I'm sure if you want to buy Pacific Rim and you haven't yet, save it and get it for $15-$10 instead of spending $30 on it by now.
Same with World War Z. I see that one being one on sale, and there's quite a few that have come out recently that'll all be on that $3, $4, $5 sale.
Yeah. So
true. So that's pretty much it for the coming attractions. So we're gonna transition in here to our credit conversation, and Kevin, I'll throw it over to you since you're the one who came up with last week's question. What was the question we had for our listeners last week?
I was just curious because I have pretty strong opinions on certain actors or actresses, either on the positive or negative side. So I was just curious if there was certain people out there that would really steer you away from a movie or that would make you interested in something that you normally would not be interested in. A couple interesting. I just want to throw out some of the names that people threw out there that I thought were pretty good. Wit had said that I'd probably say Sam Rockwell for the actor, and I'm assuming he's saying that in a positive light. I can see that as someone being drawn to any movie that Sam Rockwell's in. Here's if I see a movie full of Disney teen stars, I'll stay away. They also said something about staying away from Larry the Cable Guy or the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, I guess could be thrown in there. We had Steven Seagal thrown under a bus, Chuck Norris, as people that they would make stay away from a movie. Eddie Murphy, as far as his current stuff. Denzel Washington in the positive, as far as going to see stuff. Kristen Stewart in the negative. So I thought some of those were fun. You guys kind of asked me which ones I would put in there. As far as people that will make me stay away from a movie almost no matter what, outside of The Rock, anybody that has appeared as a WWE superstar usually will steer me away from a movie. Like I said, outside of The Rock. Chuck Norris, I agree, that'll keep me away from a movie. Matthew Lillard really turns me off.
Aww.
And Vin Diesel, I just cannot take him serious.
Have you, just a side note, Matthew Lillard, have you seen The Bridge on FX?
No.
You should check that out.
Maybe
or have you seen
change my mind about him?
The Descendants.
Yeah, I saw The Descendants. I did not like him in it.
Yeah.
But I did like the movie. Vin Diesel is probably my biggest one, though. I just can't stand Vin Diesel. On a more of a minor note, I'm not a huge Russell Brand fan, and like lately, Tom Cruise and John Travolta don't really have much buying power with me. But they don't keep me away like some of those other people I mentioned. And on the flip side, people that will make me go see a movie just about no matter what. Denzel Washington's at the top of the list. I will see any movie he's in no matter what. I really am usually drawn to stuff, like I said earlier, Liam Neeson's in, Daniel Day-Lewis, Matt Damon. Lately, Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Wahlberg. I'll go check them out, usually no matter what. And I still have a thing for Mel Gibson, so I'll usually go see him no matter how crazy he is. So
have you seen Get the Gringo? I know that.
No, I have not seen that.
It's actually not that bad. With Mel,
I wanted
Gibson.
to. I just haven't had a chance to.
It's on Netflix if you're interested.
Gotcha. Bill Murray usually and Robin Williams on the comedy side. I'll usually watch their stuff too, unless it's just something that I know is going to be. With comedy, it's a little bit. You can sometimes tell a little bit easier if something's going to be awful or good. But those are some of the names I was thinking of. Dan, do you have any that draw you one way or the other?
I mean, actors, not necessarily. I'm more because I feel like you can get a good performance out of not any actor, but a good director if can take an actor who isn't that great and do some interesting things with them. And you know, like though I don't love the movie Precious, which stars not Moesha, but I can't think of her name. You know, that has, you know, people in it that I'm not big fans of, but they give great performances because, you know, they fit the role and the director directed them well enough. So I don't think if I saw a name on a cast list, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to it now. I think someone mentioned like reality stars. Yeah, if something was full with like a reality TV stars or something, which is more of a, you know, not like something like that. Like if Paris Hilton was starring in a movie, yeah, probably not going to go see it. Or Kim Kardashian, you know, one of those people. Yeah, like not an actual actor, but just some famous person. Or if it stars like an NBA star, and it's not Space Jam, probably not going to go see it.
See, for me, if it's like John Cena and Steve Austin, I'll pass.
See, I do like The Condemned though, or which is it's kind of a schlocky, like, you know, putting people in an island and having them fight to the death. It's not a great film, but I do enjoy it. But yeah, for the most part, like I'm not watching what is that the Marine or the Marine 2 right. Or the Marine 3 or 4 or 5. So
who would you say is your biggest draw right now? Who are you a huge fan of currently?
Biggest draw. I mean, wow. Michael Fassbender is one that will make me go see a movie. Tom Hardy. Some of the younger actors that are coming up. Sometimes it's like those side characters, like Joe Johnson, who's, you know, really funny on New Girl. He's the reason I went to go. I actually picked up Drinking Buddies on demand. Like I find him funny, and also the reason I went to see Safety Not Guaranteed. So sometimes it's more so those like smaller actors that are maybe in a TV show here or there that I'm interested in. So I'm like, okay, I'll see what else they're doing. So those are kind of Fassbender, Joe Johnson. But Benedict Cumberbatch, you know, he is the only really reason I had any interest in The Fifth Estate was because of him. So,
Michael, I know you said usually it's not going to be an actor that either pushes you towards or away from a movie, but any thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same kind of idea that Dan does, where it's not so much who's in a movie, it's more like I'm more interested in who's directing it or who's writing it, or sometimes it's even the studio. And I know that sounds kind of weird because studios can produce a wide range of things, but for a while, you know, Pixar was on a hot streak, and it was kind of like if Pixar was in the front of it, I'm probably going to go check it out. I kind of regret seeing Brave and Cars 2 and some other things, mainly because they've been getting knocked around, like we said earlier, by Disney, by their own, you know, Disney Animation is now trouncing Pixar at their own game. But it's kind of I pay more attention to that stuff than who's in it, because the example I kind of used when we were talking, I think we were talking about episode the prequel movies last week, and we brought up Hayden Christensen, who was not a very good Anakin Skywalker, but I thought he was pretty good in Push. and that just to me, the fact that I thought he was better in Push than he was in Star Wars, I kind of chalk that up to just George Lucas being awful. But Hayden Christensen could also be bad too, but I did like him more in Push than I did in that. So it's kind of I'm more willing to, like Dan said, I think a different crew or people can get different performances out of people. Like other than that, I kind of will just follow right now, since the cast of the TV show was kind of young when it aired. Friday Night Lights is one of my favorite TV shows. Maybe my favorite. So I think it may be my favorite live action TV show of like all time. But I will, anyone that it ends up on the silver screen that was in that series, I will go and see a movie that they're in. Like
I agree with that. No, I was just saying I had the same type of stuff with stuff that I watched. I remember watching, people can make fun of me for this, but I remember watching Party of Five when I was like really young, and then I was like always interested to see where, like Matthew Fox or Lacey Chabert or Jennifer Love Hewitt was going to end up, even if it was terrible stuff. I was like, oh, I'll watch it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the same thing can be kind of said, right, with some of the Friday Night Lights guys, like Taylor Kitsch. He came out of that. I think he was great on Friday Night Lights as the washed out high school jock, but he had a kind of he was cast as Gambit in X-Men Origins, Wolverine Origins, which was just awful. I don't think he was bad in it. That was just a bad movie. I am one of the few people that actually enjoyed Battleship. And I will take all the shit in the world for that, but I actually do enjoy that movie. I see it as kind of like what I wanted Transformers to be in the first place, and also as kind of like a modern day Top Gun with giant robots. I did not see John Carter, although I do own it. The one thing I do hear from people that are close to me that have seen John Carter are just, they say that it's not as bad as it's not good, but it's not as bad as everyone says it is, and at least every dollar in that movie shows up on screen.
It's the only movie my sister has ever walked out on.
The only one I've ever walked out on was Cider House Rules. I wanted to walk out of Daredevil, but
you didn't like Cider House Rules?
No. So, but I don't know. I like anyone that was in the Ocean's movies. I do like George Clooney. In fact, and it's kind of weird, right? I do like the one person that kind of came out of Twilight that I actually liked was Anna Kendrick. In fact, one of my favorite movies is Up in the Air.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I was amazed that Anna Kendrick could kind of stand toe to toe against George Clooney.
That's a good example, actually, because that is the only reason I watched Pitch Perfect.
But yeah, I follow people from like Super 8. I watched Super 8 because it was Kyle Channing. Or Chandler. Yeah, he was the coach. Yeah, he's the coach in Friday Night Lights. Like, he's one of the main characters in Friday Night Lights, and obviously he's been everywhere else before that because he's kind of like he's a guy that comes on and does smaller roles on TV shows. But I went to see Super 8 because it was him. But one of the other reasons I went to see Super 8 is because it was a J.J. Abrams flick.
Right.
I just think that, who thought Eminem could act, and then they put him in 8 Mile, and it was actually a pretty good movie.
What helps when you're playing yourself?
Well, okay, yeah.
No, I'm just joking. No, I mean, it's actually kind of hard playing yourself, but I think he did fine in that. And you look at, like, we did Captain Phillips not too long ago. Those Somali pirates, they never acted before, and they were suitable for that role. But on the same lines of, like, Friday Night Lights characters, I'm the same way with, like, The Wire. Like, that's why, like, anything Idris Elba does, I'm super interested in, because he's Stringer Bell, so he's always going to be Stringer Bell. Or anytime I see, like, a Wire actor, an actor from The Wire show up, I'm excited.
Have you watched Luther?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Only a few episodes. I haven't watched that fully. I want to go back to that. We started watching that, and then we went down Sherlock and never went back, so I need to go back to that.
Right now, the guys that I'm kind of watching right now is Benedict Cumberbatch, like everybody else is, Martin Freeman, and some other guys. But like one of the guys that I will actually go see that gets kind of a lot of hate recently, but I think that might just be the take I have on the guy is Nicolas Cage.
I have the same feeling about Kevin Costner.
Nicolas Cage, I will go see a movie that Nicolas Cage is in because I feel like I don't ever feel like he's doing it he might be, but I don't ever feel like he's doing it for the paycheck. I feel like he's doing it because he's having fun with it.
Yeah. I was surprised we didn't get some more Nicolas Cage and Keanu Reeves comments. So those are the ones that you typically hear. But yeah, I have no problem with either of them. And I have the same thing. Like, people like to rip on Kevin Costner up and down, but I enjoy him as an actor.
I feel like people are coming around with Kevin Costner. Like, I think he works well as that like older father figure that he's been kind of playing recently. So I think he's gonna have maybe like a resurgence recently, because he's in the new Jack Ryan movie, and he was just in Smallville, or not Smallville, but Man of Steel. Same difference.
I was just gonna say same difference.
But anyway, so any other actors or actresses? We didn't really talk about many actresses or anything besides Anna Kendrick. Any other?
I'll still watch Anna Kendrick and Julia Roberts. I'll still watch Julia Roberts. I don't know. I guess that's just the boyhood crush that I had on her, maybe. But Anna Kendrick's my biggest draw as far as and I should say Zoe Saldana. I like both of them.
For some reason, I don't feel like I can talk about female actresses without sounding sexist.
Yeah,
it's like it's kind of I mean, there are actresses that I like to watch on screen. It's kind of weird. Sometimes I'll track down a movie for various reasons, and then I'll find out that it's actually like a really good movie and be completely blown away with it. Like I like Anne Hathaway. I think she's really good. I'll see something that she's in. I do like Scarlett Johansson beyond the obvious reasons. Like I actually went to see Nanny Diaries because I like her, but Chris Evans was also in that movie, and I like Chris Evans.
One that comes to my mind, or a couple, are like Emma Stone. Like I find her really funny and and engaging, and I mean, like, kind of an obvious choice, but Jennifer Lawrence, she just won the Oscar, but I think she's got I've been a fan of her ever since I saw her in Winter's Bone, and I think she's probably have a pretty strong career. Like, I think she is a big reason I'll go see The Hunger Games, also because of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's another actor that I'll track down. If he's in a movie, I'm probably going to go see it.
Jane Levy is another up-and-comer that I actually like. She's a regular. She's the female lead on Supergatory. That's on TV, right. And she was also in Evil Dead, the remake. I don't know if either of you saw that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, she was pretty good in that as like the.
She's actually, whenever somebody brings up, they're like, we need to cast Mary Jane Watson in Amazing Spider-Man. I always say Jane Levy. She's younger than everybody else, but I think she's better than, I can't pronounce that girl's name for the life of me, but Shailene Woodley. I never bought her as Mary Jane Watson ever.
I think Shailene Woodley is a really great actress. I don't know if she'd fit that role, but she was great in The Descendants, and her. It's the only thing I really know her from. But I always thought Emma Stone would be a great Mary Jane Watson, but obviously they can't do that because she's Gwen Stacy. So.
Well, they could just dye her hair red and have her play both roles. That'd be fun.
She's a clone of herself. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, Dreama Walker is another one that I'll someone else that I'm paying attention to as well. She was on Apartment 23. She was in that movie Compliance.
Yeah, okay.
Some other things like that. But.
So Dan, what's our question for next week?
Well, I guess since you guys came up, I decided to try to come up with one, and since we're movie fans here and we talk about Blu-ray, streaming, Netflix, I thought we'd find out, how do you consume your movies? Are you theater goers? Do you stream, collect, rent from Redbox, etc.? How do you get your movie facts? We'll go over this next week, but you can probably just by listening to us have an idea of where we get our movies. But just curious, like, because a lot of people don't go to the theaters anymore for different reasons, and if you don't go to the theaters, why? If you stream, why do you stream? Does anyone collect Blu-rays besides us very select few? Or it seems like that is, people are gearing away from the physical media out there. So I'm curious if our listeners are streamers or if they're collectors. So
I want to add on to this because I think that this kind of dovetails nicely into this an article that I read. I think we talked about it on a past Geekcast Radio, but it's the good enough generation. Dan, I think you were there for that conversation, where it's the people that actually care about high quality video and audio, like kind of like how records are still, they have they have the best sound quality, but people still prefer like CDs or MP3s and stuff like that. I think this kind of goes along with that. It's like, what is like, I guess it's like, what is like, will you watch a movie on your phone? Like, do you allow yourself to watch your movie on your phone or your iPad or a tablet, or do you prefer to see it like kind of, like here, like in a theater or on like on an actual TV? Are you a member of the good enough? Like, is a YouTube video like good enough for you? I'm just kind of curious as to what kind of people think about that as well. As far as your viewing habits. So,
all right. Well, anything else anyone would like to bring up before we bring this show to a close?
I'm good.
I'm good and ready to get fully immersed into this fall season of movies here now that I'm back in town and get a chance to see it on a regular daily basis. So I like where this is going.
Awesome. So I'm just going to go run down real quickly how you can get a hold of us. There's a number of great ways. You can call the voicemail line. That's 502-526-5821. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Just put in the subject line MWIRE Weekly. You can visit the forums or episode posts at geekcastradio.com. Visit the Facebook page by searching Geekcast Radio Network, or you can also get us on Twitter at Geekcast Radio, #MWIRE. What are all of your Twitter names?
I am at Booth Ninja 81.
I'm at Optimus Solo.
And I am at Movie Revolt. That's all for us for this week. And remember, for all things movies, keep tuned to MWIRE Weekly.